Hey, what's up there, everybody? It's Odin here. It's Sunday, and you know what that means. You know what that means. That means I'm just making my random video talking about random shit, whatever rolls across the fucking melon, and telling you about it. Because we got some shit to talk about. None of it very important, but all of it, shit I want to talk about. Um, First off, enjoying Boilermaker as I tend to do. This is more Evan Williams and Stella Artois, which is found a very good pairing for Boilermakers. So, skull, cheers, na zdravie. Yeah, so what were we going to talk about? Well, this weekend, I hope it was great for all of you. Mine was pretty good, but it was full of busyness. All of it important, I guess. Anyone who's a collector knows of comics. You have this like time where you just gotta like dig in and like do maintenance and organize shit and rebag and board a lot of stuff. So in doing that, I ran out of bags and boards and had to run to the comic shop. I had to get silver bags. I had to get golden age bags. I had to get magazine bags and boards and all of it. And then got what was in my pull slot. One of the things that was in that pull slot was this new Savage Sword of Conan #1 from Titan Comics, featuring a Joe Jusko 2023 painting. And at least that's the cover I got. That was just what she pulled for me. I think she knows me well enough to know that's the one I would have chose. Because at the back of the book, it shows all the covers. And it's like, well, I would go classic and get Joe Jusko, of course. But yeah, I got this, and I figured to do like, not a total side-by-side, but just kind of like, what's this book about? And how does it compare to the old magazine? Because they made it magazine style, which is great. They made it newsprint, black and white, which is great. But there are differences, of course. It's modern. But we'll talk a bit about that and show it next to a classic one that I picked somewhat at random. I did pick on purpose a Joe Jusko cover, which... one of my favorite Joe Jusko covers ever. And he had a lot of good ones. So we'll kind of look at this. We'll look at the new one. And see what the pros and cons to this new version is. On the screen here is a new shove page. Now this is it's more or less, I mean, it's basically a splash page. And at this point... in the story, it follows a 2-page spread that I shared out a little while ago. And you follow a 2-page spread with what's basically a splash page. Well, I do, or I did, or I am. And, there's rules, there's things you should or shouldn't do. I think a lot of things in the old days were dictated, especially if you're making a monthly book and you have an economy of space and to tell the story, you do things a little differently than if you just don't worry about that shit. So, yeah, I'm not worried about it. I think story-wise, this is a perfect page to follow up that last one, personally. Now, if my naivety, is good in any kind of way, it's good in the fact that I'll take chances, not knowing that I'm taking chances. Now, I'm semi-aware of, some things you do and don't do in comics, blah, 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 but I'm also aware that this is my book. I can literally do whatever the hell I want, and pay the consequences, good or bad. I think this is a good gamble. I think it'll be great as far as the storytelling narrative. And I'm excited because we're only a couple pages before this story is done. This is one story in 5 for Unconditional Chef Volume 2. This is the only one that I'm writing and drawing, and we're very close to wrapping it up. But that is the story behind this piece of artwork on the page here. See the full view there, the full bleed. Yeah. So, Unconditional Chef Volume 2, we're going to have signups for that very soon. As it stands, we have signups for Kill Them Dead relaunch on Kickstarter, signups for Magnificent Bastards Volume 2 on Indiegogo. There's also going to be a Fund My Comic version with an exclusive shirt, only for the Fund My Comic people. That shirt features some badass art from some spoiler scene from the book, but that shirt, the artwork is done by none other than Sebastian, the Skunk Artworks, and it's a beautiful piece. Excited to get my own version, my own copy, my own shirt. So that's in signups on Indiegogo, and there will also be that exclusive Fund My Comic shirt. And then I keep saying it, one of these days it'll happen. We'll have Fund My Comic for the Bastards and Shoves reprints. I know I've been saying that for like 3 weeks, but like eventually, maybe even longer, I don't know. Eventually that will happen. I'm not sure we're waiting on something, but it'll happen. And then those will be launched and you can order them, and that'll be more like storefront, so they'll just be like print on demand, more or less. Actually, we're going to print a gross and then ship on demand, but out of that gross stock we can take them on the road, and then Splash, sign up for that, is coming soon. That is Skunk Artworks' children's book, which I've seen a lot of imagery for, and he's told me the story. It sounds awesome, and that's going to be a great one. We'll also have Paper Machete coming soon. The story of rock and roll lifestyle, Amish kids coming of age, and cultic, deviant, murderous, gory behavior. And how that all ties in, you'll have to read to find out. But as they end up in a fight for their life. So there's Paper Machete, and then also Cascadia, which is Ryan Miller's book. I believe he says Neolithic Age. A story of a young apprentice being forced to become a man, and in the midst of war, and really cool stuff. Ryan's a very creative guy, and I'm excited for that. So yeah, that's kind of what we got on the horizon. Now I'm personally working on Kill Them Dead, and of course Unconditional Chef Volume 2, and so those are the ones I'm most excited for, because I'm personally creating pages all the time and I'm watching it like come to life. So also eventually here soon, book some time at the studio and fly out to Washington to record the vocals for the next batch of songs. I think I want one more song to be completed before I go out there and get those knocked out. Work on the lyrics and melody and get those really tight before I go out there. But I'll probably want to book that time here soon. So yeah, those things are all happening and coming together. So anyway, Savage Sword of Conan. Let's do this real quick. Let's look at this. Should we look at... I'm trying to debate. Should we look at the old version? Yeah, let's look at the old version first. That's kind of like how they... somebody who's supposed to be an expert at telling forgeries or counterfeit money or something, is they don't... It's not so much that they learn how to spot the differences. and what's wrong with everybody else's stuff. It's that they learn to understand the original so well that they see anything that's out of line. So if you understand the real McCoy, the true artifact, then when you see a fake, it's really obvious to your trained eye. Not that I'm saying the new Savage Sword is fake or anything like that, but they are trying to capture the original. They made it magazine size. They made it black and white, grayscale. And so let's look at this Savage Sword number 64 featuring this kick-ass Joe Jesco cover. So we've got a inside cover drawing. Not my favorite, but it's all right. The background of it is pretty cool, which you can see there. It's this woman of dark skin in a very seductive pose, but it's also drawn in a style almost of Egyptian glyphs or something. But of course, it was Marvel. It says Stanley Presents Savage Sword of Conan. It's got the contents page here. A really kind of goofy faced Conan, but a cool action shot. This is freaking cool. The sword that says The Barbarian. And we've got this great image here. This looks like a Neil Adams Conan. Try to always like spot the different artists. That's just fun for me. But Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief. It was a good time. So we opened this. We've got the map of the Hyborian age of Conan, 10,000 BC. Very clear, but not very visually stunning map. Then we open to the splash page, art by John Buscema and Ernie Chan, which, yeah, doesn't get much better than that for Savage Sword. These pages are very, very Buscema-like. Oh, there's that goofy-faced Conan. But excellently drawn. You can tell Buscema's Conan looks very iconic. As you can see, his face always has the dark shadowed eyes. He mastered this Conan face that became Conan's face pretty much. And there's grayscale here, but it's not it's not heavy-handed at all. It's just there in places. The art is excellent, very clean for but see these like trees and stuff. This is very Buscema. He always did the Conan scenery with that kind of foliage. Oh, my freaking camera froze. I'm trying to do this comparison thing and the fucking camera freezes, of course. But this is just beautiful stuff. Yeah, well, that's a bust. It was such an excellent story, too. Oh, well. My camera freezing on these beautiful Buscema pages. The side by side, and I can show it on this camera. Maybe it'll kind of help. The one issue I have with this, it's all black and white grayscale, and there's some great artwork for sure. But it looks like colored pages that were turned to grayscale. Like this page that it froze on, you can see. It looks like black and white artwork that has some gray wash added. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. But this is kind of what we're getting, and it's really thick. Like the use of grays. It's overly done. And drives me nuts. Because it's hard to see. And printed on this newsprint, it bleeds a lot, and it's just like this here. It's a really cool image. You see these monsters and stuff, but it's so dark, and I've got a light shining right under my camera here, so it's actually helping. But it's so dark that they just went over the top with the grayscale, and like I said, it looks like it was colored artwork that they just turned to grayscale, which fine, whatever, but it's just so dark. It's probably the one thing that upsets me about this the most. That, and I don't like this title. I like the Conan font, but the Savage Sword of with the white halo doesn't fit. I thought they could have done better. That's all. That and Jesco drew his horse like spread eagle. Let's see. Oh. The horse is giving you the money shot right there. Anyway, but I'm excited to read it. It'll be fun. But I wanted to show the differences. That was the main difference I wanted to show. And hopefully I got that across. Is like, and some of the Conan stories weren't as stark as this one. Some of them had a lot more gray wash. But to me, this is like what a black and white comic should look like. A little bit of gray wash is fine. Like, I don't use it on my stuff. And part of it is like that my worry is that I'll go heavy-handed with the gray wash and wash it out, basically, like ruin the line art. And that's kind of what happens in this new Savage Sword. So that's my one complaint, or one or two complaints. But I haven't read it yet. We'll see. There's also a Solomon Kane story in the back, which is pretty cool, because that would happen in Savage Sword quite often. They'd just be like, and we have a Solomon Kane, or a Cole, like this one has a Cole story in the back. The one that it froze on. So. What else? So anyway, yeah, I did a ton of comic book maintenance. Got my shit all organized. I have to buy some new long boxes too, because it's just overflowing. You know, when a long box gets so full that you could still cram some in it, but you wouldn't be able to like leaf through them. You know, you have no room to like see what's in there. So it's like, yeah, I want them like bursting at the seams. Need a little room to breathe. So yeah, need more boxes. It's just growing and never stops. And I pulled out, I'm like, oh, here's some I can part with. It was like 5 books that I'm like, I just don't want these anymore. But it was interesting too, like going through it, because I found that I had like so many doubles of all the old Image titles. And I think, if I remember right, my brother gave me his collection, because we were both like big into the Image boon at the beginning. And I think he gave me his, so I have like all these doubles of so many books, like all the number ones, which aren't worth shit, but it's like, hey, they're number ones, you know. So I've got 2 Spawn number ones, 2 Pit number ones, 2 Youngblood number ones, 2 Deathblow number ones, 2 Cyberforce number. You know, it's like all of them. I have number 1 doubles, and then a lot of like the first 4. Of like pretty much everything. I think him and I bought like the first 4 of every new Image title. And we kind of went, if we don't like it after 4, fine, we'll cut it off, but we'll buy the first 4, you know, just because. Like at the time, we didn't think they were going to be worth a ton, but we also just thought, what if, you know, like, so. But you don't know shit. When I was like 13, 12, I don't know what it was. But we bought all those, and I've got tons of them. Like Darker Image. I've got like 3 copies of that. Deathmate number 1. I've got like 3 copies of that. It like is weird what I have like even multiple. Like either myself or my brother bought more than one. Or I just acquired it somehow randomly. But The other thing that's so I was watching Crowfire Studios, my friend Arvid and Oren this morning, and they were talking a bit about the new Dune movie, which inspired me to pick up the novel and read it over again. So I'm gonna dive into that tonight before I go to bed. Because growing up as a kid, my Dune experience was really solely the David Lynch movie. And then as I became a teenager, I read the book and enjoyed it wildly. Like, to be honest, I don't like novels. I don't like fiction. Like, I can handle comic books because they're so quick hitter. And even bigger graphic novels because of the visual. I don't know. But whenever I read a novel, I get about halfway through and I'm like, I just want to create something. You know, it's like inspires me, but I just want to create something. Or I get, halfway through and I'm like, this is fucking snooze fest. Like, why did they rave about this book? It sucks. It's hit or miss. But I've never been a big novel fan. I've read a few novels. I mean, I want to say a lot, but I know like people like my older brother who read nonstop. I mean, he's just constantly reading. The amount of novels he's read or books in general compared to what I've read is night and day. But I haven't sat down and read a novel in, I don't remember how long. When was the last one? I think the last one was Heinlein's Job, a comedy of justice or injustice, whatever it was called, which I love that book. That's a really good book. And when I read it, it was the second time I read it. But that one's wild. It's like a interdimensional and stuff like that, but it's also got humor. So it's got kind of what's the writer's name? The Hitchhiker's Guide. I can't think of his name. But I've read some of his stuff, and his stuff always has that British humor delivery, which I like. That'll always keep me engaged. Like the Red Dwarf books, which actually predate the show. Those keep me engaged because they got that British humor. I don't know why. And in text, like I can see it and hear it. And I love it. But as far as, there's very few, like Robert Howard. I can read all the Conan stuff, even though it's semi-formulaic. I can read it and just enjoy it. Dune, I remember enjoying, but it has been a bit, so I'm excited to read it. Some of the other Conan writers, Robert Jordan is best known for a lot of other stuff, but he wrote some pretty cool Conan books. When they revived it and were all these different writers. And then they revived it again and they sucked. But there was an era where like Robert Jordan was writing and all of the Conan covers had like Ken Kelly artwork, which I thought was badass. Ken Kelly. I was getting Kelly Jones and Ken Kelly confused. Like, which artist did Batman? Which one? Ken Kelly. So yeah, those were always badass. I mean, they're not like the Robert Howard books, not at all. And it's weird. They're like, oh, just take the Conan character and write a novel. But so they didn't write it anything like in Howard's style. But they typically kept true to the character, of Conan, how he acted and in any given scenario. So yeah. Anyway, I was gonna go watch the second Dune. I thought about watching it today, and I went and looked, and it was all sold out, which I'm happy for. I think that's good. Even though I'm hoping for like good new material, it's all rehashes, and this is definitely that. But Dune is one of those ones, and I don't know if they're doing the greatest job. I did like the first one, but I don't know if they're capturing it. I'm curious about the second one. Like, this will be the proof in the pudding, because it kind of like sludged through a lot of the first one, going like, oh, there's a lot of really cool shit, and there's a lot that's just kind of like, it's like any other movie, you know. It's not capturing the scale, but occasionally it would capture the scale. And when it did, I'm like, you're fucking killing it. This is great. I thought I want to see more Harkonian like weirdness, because they were doing really good with that. And honestly, that was what the David Lynch version, like, it freaked me out as a kid when I watched it, you know, because I was like, these people are fucking crazy, you know, and evil looking and dark. And they were starting to delve into that. There were certain scenes where I'm like, that's it. You're getting it. But there was so little, you know, and a lot of it was just build up. So I'm hoping episode 2, the sequel, has a lot of that, like, just profound, intense moments and imagery that really like set in my mind as a young person, pretty young, when I saw the first Dune first time. Just kind of like came across in such a powerful way. So hopefully they capture that. We'll see. But that's what inspired reading the book again, and then also because it was sold out today. So, and I'm like, oh, I should watch the original, not the original. Well, maybe I should watch the original. Read the book, watch the David Lynch version, and watch episode 1 of the new reboot. I don't know. Or just go in totally dry and then read the book and then watch all the... I don't know. Nonetheless, I'm going to go watch it because it's one of the last really enjoyable films I watched, even though it was really long, and it certainly didn't have to be that long, but whatever. Oh, and here's something for you, because this is one of my favorite shows, hands down, of all time. So I talk a lot about Red Dwarf. I love The Simpsons. You know, these shows that like meant a lot to me. Twilight Zone. It's like these upper tier. Like Twilight Zone and Red Dwarf are just like at the top of everything I love. But right there with them is a series from I think it's the 60s. It might have been early 70s, but I'm pretty sure it's the late 60s. Called The Prisoner. A lot of you might know The Prisoner. The Prisoner was a great show. As far as I know, it was only one season. Now, I've been watching a lot of that lately because it's on Freevee right now. You can watch it for free. It's great. My first exposure with that was like a lot of people who are metalheads. Was Iron Maiden Number of the Beast. They had a song called The Prisoner. And it opens with some of the opening dialogue of the show, which is like, we want information. Information. Who are you? The new number 2. Who is number 1? You are number 6. I am not a number. I'm a free man. Ha 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 ha. That's how every episode begins, pretty much. There's a longer dialogue, banter back and forth. But if you don't know anything about The Prisoner, it's basically, there's a spy played by Patrick McGoohan, who is phenomenal as an actor. He just killed it. He's also the executive producer of the show, so he really believed in the idea. He's a spy who out of nowhere goes into retirement. This is the setup for the show. And he says, I retire. I'm done being a spy. But it was a shock to everybody. So what ends up happening, he goes back to his apartment. Gas fills the room. And... whoop. Embarrassing. Gas fills the room. he's unconscious. He's taken away, and he wakes up in this very surreal, psychedelic environment they call the village. And he doesn't know why he's there. He doesn't know what's going on. But very quickly you realize because he was a spy and because he retired, everyone assumes he had information or secrets that they could pull out of his brain. So the whole premise of the show is like he's stuck on this island called the village. And the village you don't really, like, all the way through the series, you don't really decipher why the hell they go through this elaborate scenario to like pull information. But the general idea is that this village is a place for people who have secrets or information that's valuable and they want to pull that information from their brains. So they're basically a counter government or whatever that are trying to get secrets. Now, the elaborate nature of this island is what's intriguing about the show. Because it's very psychedelic, very trippy, surreal. But there's all these people who live here, and everybody has a number. And, he spends a lot of time trying to figure out who the prisoners are and who the warders are and the guards. But everybody has a number, and everything's extremely elaborate because part of it is, like, they can't just torture him to no end and try to get this information, even though that's kind of what they do in a very elaborate, psychedelic, trippy kind of way, is torture him. But they want to get this information from him, so they put him in these situations and scenarios to, like, mess with his brain, so hopefully he'll trip up and give information. But he's a tough nut to crack. Let's put it that way. So every episode begins the same way, with that little bit of dialogue that I just repeated that was on the Iron Maiden, the Prisoner song at the beginning. I am not a number. I am a free man. Which is great. I mean, it starts with, what does he say? Where am I? And they say, in the village. And then he says, what do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it, he says. By hook or by crook, we will. Which I always like that line. By hook or by crook, we will. And he says, who are you? The new number 2. So every episode begins with a new number 2. And number 2 is like the overseer of the village. But every new episode, it's a different person. Which is a genius idea. It's just kind of like throws everything off. And they all have very different temperaments and personalities. Which seemingly is done on purpose to try to like garner that information out of him and by crook or by hook. So he says, who are you? The new number 2. Who is number 1? You are number 6. Yeah, such a great show. And it's late 60s. Everything has this, I mean, it looks like a Pink Floyd video or something. Or whatever, I don't know, like the Hollies or something. Everything has this very psychedelic, bubblegum, peppermint kind of look to it. Lots of pinwheels, lots of, just pretty psychedelic. And every time he tries to escape, there's these anti-escape orbs, which are just like these floating, blown-up balloon condom thing. It's pretty cheesy in a lot of ways, but it works. Like, you have to suspend a lot of disbelief, but it works. And you also have to realize what time it was, what period it was made, because a lot of the technology, like nowadays, they would go a whole different route and use much more advanced technology. But even in that, what, let's say 60 years ago, even then, like, it's pretty interesting how they use that for espionage. And Patrick McGowan, this badass kind of 007-esque kind of person, and some really great episodes. Some that aren't as good, of course, but some really great episodes, and everyone starts with a new number two and a new approach to try to get information from him. And he has a new elaborate way to try to escape, and it always ends up with him back there at square one. So they start the next episode, and it goes through all this elaborate stuff, and then it ends up back there again. So anyway, I'm got like 2 or 3 more episodes before I finish. Now, when I first watched the show, so like I said, my first exposure was the Iron Maiden song, which that sticks in your brain just because, the album's called Number of the Beast, and they go, "You are number 6," so you can make this mental association and stuff. Plus, I like the song "The Prisoner." So every time I hear that opening monologue, I still hear that drum beat from Nico McBrain. It's like, because that's how the song starts. But that was my first exposure. But I didn't know. So when I first moved to Spokane, it was a really rough time in my life. My wife at the time, we separated. I didn't know anybody. And I ended up moving to this small town called Cheney because of work reasons and other reasons. And so I was just kind of living there by myself, but I didn't have any money because I was like, I don't know, it was just a pretty destitute time in the life of Odin. But there was a local library down the road. And I'm like, oh, I'll get a library card. There's no internet. I didn't have, anything. I had a VCR and a TV. Literally a VCR and a TV. So I went to the local library, got a library card. Again, the small town library. And they had like a VHS section. And they just happened to have this show called The Prisoner. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know because I didn't know where that quote came from when I first heard the Iron Maiden songs. And so I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. 1967. I knew I loved Twilight Zone. I knew I loved older stuff. So I was like, I'll give it a shot. So I rented all the Prisoners they had, which I didn't have the full, they were missing episodes and stuff. I came home and that was my entertainment. Well, I just kind of lived by myself in this small apartment, totally isolated. I didn't have friends or anything around. I didn't have money to do anything. So that's why I went to the library, because it was free. So I rented all these, or checked out all these movies from the library. And took them back home, started watching it, just fell in love. But right away, when the intro starts, I'm like, this is the Iron Maiden song. I know what this is. So I was already hooked. I'm like, this is great. But then watching it, I'm like, it's psychedelic, which I loved. It's surreal, which I loved. It's espionage and spy games and all that. It was so great. And so it was kind of a savior for me at that time in my life to just have some entertainment. I was drawing a lot at that time. I didn't have money to do anything, And like I said, no, I didn't have a computer. The internet was there, but it wasn't like as prominent as it was. Nobody, we didn't use our phones the way we do now. There was no source of like just taking my mind off shit, except for that. So I got that, and I also got Ken Burns' The War, which is his phenomenal documentary about World War II that kind of goes back and forth between the soldiers' lives, the people at home, and it focused on a few different towns throughout the U.S. and a few different soldiers from those towns and their experiences on the whether in Japan or in invading Germany, and it was excellent. So those things became very profound to me at that time. But then I hadn't watched it since. I just always knew I liked it. But then I recently found out it was free on Freevee, and so I started watching all the episodes again. The last episode I watched is a particular favorite of mine because he's gone through scenario after scenario, and their elaborate schemes to try to get information from him, and his elaborate schemes to try to get off the island. And the last one I watched was hilarious. It was just brilliant because I'm like, I would have done this like right away, just by the nature of my personality. But so the new number 2 in this episode was pretty brash, and you could tell he was kind of sadistic, and so he's going to be a little more violently persuasive, or he wants to be. But they always put the kibosh on that. So he has a little bit of carte blanche on this island because of his knowledge. They don't want to damage his brain. So they can fucking do shit to him, but they can't go too far, because if they do and they lose that valuable information, all the work is for nothing. But so this, angry, more intense number 2 is letting him know that, like, I'm your jailer, you're the prisoner. And so what number 6, the prisoner, Patrick McGowan, does is he goes, I'm gonna fuck with this guy. I'm just gonna fuck with him. And the whole episode is just him fucking with the guy. It's hilarious. So he starts like writing secret notes, and he'll go up to random people and kind of like whisper in their ear. And then number 2 will bring those people. What did number 6 whisper in your ear? And they're like, nothing. He said some gibberish and walked off. And he's like, liar, you guys are planning things, And so he like totally gets in his brain. And then he like ties a message to a carrier pigeon, to a pigeon, just a random pigeon. Like he catches a pigeon, runs out in the woods, and they got surveillance on him. And they're like, what's he doing? Oh, he's got a pigeon. Follow that pigeon. And he like puts a little message on it, and it's just got like random numbers. It looks like a Powerball submission or something. It's like 60, 12, 18, 60, 20. And he's like, put this in the decoder and tell me what it means, And all of it is just plans to fuck with number 2 and get him all paranoid. And he does. He totally like takes the bait. And there's one scene where he like gets a mirror, and he goes out on the coast, and he's just like flashing the mirror, doing SOS signals. He's like, SOS, decode it. What's he saying? And they decode it, and it says patty cake baker's man. He's like, it must be code. It must mean something. And they're like, no, it doesn't mean anything. So he just fucks with them the whole time until he forces him to resign at the end. So I loved that episode just for that simple fact of him like doing this all pseudo espionage, and he was making like really cryptic statements, and the number 2 is sitting there like, that's got to be code for something, and it's just him fucking with him. It was great. So that was really good. There's been some really excellent episodes throughout. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. That's just the one I watched most recently, but I've been watching it all week while I've been drawing this page that you can't see anymore. So if you can, if you have Amazon, you can watch Freevee, but I think they have a website. You just go to Freevee. I think it's like Tubi. And it says with ads, but on the Amazon one that I watch, there's never any ads. So yeah, you can watch The Prisoner, which is such a great show. And Patrick McGowan's amazing. Every episode's interesting and different. I mean, there's a million holes in the logic behind all of this. But there's also a million questions that may, because of the questions there, maybe it fills some of the holes. But regardless, it's so much fun. I thoroughly enjoy it. And I can't remember how it ends. I don't know if I ever saw the ending. I only had the videos that they had at the local library. So I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, that's been that's kind of been my week is watching that. We didn't do Saturday Night Leaped last night. No Saturday Night Leaped. Apparently we didn't have any extra people to do it, but I told James, I'm like, I'm fine, just you and me. Like, we can carry a show. Like, we've done it before, so. But he decided not to have a show, so. This coming week, I'll be at Kansas City Comic-Con, so I won't be able to do the show. So if there is a Saturday Night Leaped, I won't be on it. So that's where that's at. Like, there was a couple of people hitting me out through the day, like, "Hey, what time is the show tonight?" And I was telling them, and then there was no show. So sorry about that. Let's see what else. Well, there's that. Kansas City Comic Con's coming up next weekend. Taking my daughter, just her and I. Her sisters won't be there. It'll just be her and I, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. She really wants to meet Matthew Lillard and have her photo up with him, and I'm excited to give that to her. And that's really the only reason we're going. Like, of course I want to go to a Comic-Con. They're always fun. But I wasn't going to go for any other reason except for that she really, really wanted to go. So, yeah, that's about what we got. What's fit to print, as my brother says every time we hang up. So when I talk to my brother on the phone, kind of goes the rundown. All my siblings do that. Here's what's going on in my life. Blah, 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 blah. And then my brother always ends the same way. And that's what's fit to print in my world. So yeah, that's what's fit to print in my world right now. I'm just getting through all that. It's gotten a lot warmer here in Missouri. I can't in good conscience turn on the AC in March. I mean, I've got all through April. I'm not going to do it. I don't care how hot it gets. I'm not turning on the AC. I will not turn on air conditioning until May at the very earliest. I just can't do it. But it was a bit warmer. It was noticeably warmer. And especially coming out of colder weather, it doesn't have to be that much. It's not like it's 100 degrees. It's like an 80-degree day, and you're like, whoa, it's hot. Just because you're not used to it. But I wasn't used to it, but I'm like, do not turn on the AC. Resist. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got. As always, I hope you're doing awesome. As typical, I get kind of introspective at the end of the video, and I get pretentious and all that, but I'm not going to do that now. Like, there's a lot on my heart and mind, a whole lot, but they're my struggles. They're not for anybody. A lot of things I'll share, and I'm pretty open book about stuff, but a lot of things just really aren't any, they're not, they're either private for a reason, or they're just not things that a man should talk about publicly. But, I've got a lot go in my heart and mind. But I will say that wherever you're at, because as life is in flux and there's always changes, and there's always, having things at the front of your heart and mind, whether they're vexing or heartwarming, it doesn't matter. You should have things at the forefront of your heart and mind. People and those you care about and stuff. And certainly that. And it just makes me think that wherever you're at in life, like, do your best to face those obstacles or those struggles or those things that vex your mind and spirit, like, with courage and confidence and power, and always a great deal of care for the loved ones that you care about. And and act with integrity. Do what you say, be what you say you are, follow through, and that's the best you can do sometimes. Occasionally, I mean, there's action that is demanded of you, where you can say, I'm standing on these things, but if you don't act, you're not really standing on those things. Occasionally, there's action that has to be done to prove that integrity or that care for the loved ones or that power or confidence or courage. They're not just words. So, but those moves have to be calculated in regards to those virtuous things that I just listed. And so occasionally you get to that point, but wherever you're at, that I truly believe that if you are calculating those moves within the framework of the care for the loved ones and the integrity and boldness, being emboldened to do what needs to be done. But I believe if you calculate your moves within that framework, whether it works out the way you or other people think it should, I believe time will still prove you right. So if you keep those within as your bumpers, and you remove selfishness, and you remove ego, and you remove the things that kind of taint the vision and can skew what moves you should make, I think if you do that, generally, like I said, time will prove you right. So hopefully wherever you're at, that you're following that, you're keeping within that framework and being as much pure awesome as you could possibly be. And that's about all I got to say about that. So yeah, we'll wrap it up. Until next time, this is Odin here. I hope you're doing awesome. I hope you're staying there and doing your best. And nobody does their best. I've talked about that many times. But still, being consciously mindful of those things, I think you'll be fine. So until next time, Odin here. We'll see ya.